They say every photograph captures a moment, but this one captured a place that shouldn't exist. When Claire developed the old film roll she found in her grandfather's attic, she expected faded memories, not a hotel that no one remembers building. The lights inside were still on, the doors slightly open, and at the window, someone was watching her. Now, every time she looks at the photo, the hotel seems closer. And if she looks too long, she swears she can hear the lobby phone ringing. The day Thomas Graves arrived at the coastal town was shrouded in a dense, clammy mist that clung to the shoreline like a shroud. The air was thick with the briny tang of the sea, sharp and biting against his skin as he stepped off the train onto the creaking wooden platform. His boots made soft thuds on the weathered planks, soaked by the morning drizzle, while overhead, gulls called out plaintively, their cries carried away by the cold breeze. Ahead, the landscape stretched out bleak and windswept, dominated by the crumbling silhouette of a grand but decrepit hotel perched precariously at the edge of the cliffs. Its peeling paint and broken windows seemed almost spectral in the grey light, a ghostly sentinel watching over the town. Thomas paused for a moment, pulling his coat tighter around him as he took in the sight. This was the place, the locus of whispered stories and unsolved mysteries that had drawn him here. In his satchel lay a folder thick with photographs, each one a haunting testament to lives vanished without a trace. Yet in every single image, no matter how mundane or hurried, that same faded hotel appeared in the background, as if standing watch over the final moments of the missing. His first stop was a small cafe tucked away on a narrow street lined with weather-beaten shops. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of stale coffee and damp wood, mingled with the faint aroma of sea salt. The few patrons glanced up briefly before returning to their hushed conversations, their eyes wary and guarded. Thomas settled at a corner table, laying out his collection of photographs one by one under the dim glow of an oil lamp. The images, some blurred, others starkly clear, each bore the unmistakable outline of the hotel, looming silently behind families, friends, and strangers who had since disappeared. "You see it, don't you?" he murmured to himself, tracing the edges of a particularly faded photo. Always there, always watching. A waitress approached hesitantly, her eyes flickering to the pictures before she quickly averted her gaze. "Best not to ask about that place," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's been empty for years. Folks round here don't like to talk about it." Thomas nodded, sensing the weight of fear beneath her words. Determined, he ventured further, speaking with shopkeepers and fishermen, but each inquiry was met with reticence or subtle warnings. One elderly man muttered about curses and bad luck, while another hurried away when Thomas pressed him too hard. The hotel's shadow stretched long over the town, a silent reminder of secrets best left undisturbed. As the afternoon waned, Thomas wandered toward the cliffs, where the wind whipped fiercely, carrying with it the distant roar of the restless sea. The sky was a brooding slate, the sun a pale smudge behind thick clouds. From this vantage point, the hotel stood stark against the horizon, its broken facade fading into the encroaching mist. It was as though the building itself breathed, exhaling a chill that seeped into the bones. He took out his camera, raising it carefully to his eye. The lens captured the decaying grandeur of the hotel, the way the fog clung to its corners like a veil. He snapped a series of photographs, each one a record, a testament to the eerie presence that seemed to haunt every frame of the missing. His fingers trembled slightly as he lowered the camera, heart pounding with a mixture of dread and determination. Night fell quickly over the town, and Thomas found lodging at a modest inn, its creaky floorboards and faded wallpaper echoing the wariness of the place. Alone in his room, he spread out the photographs once more, the hotel's ghostly outlines weaving a silent story of loss and despair. Sleep eluded him as shadows danced across the walls, and in the distance, the relentless crash of waves against jagged rocks whispered of secrets buried deep beneath the surface. This was only the beginning. The hotel at the end of the photograph had called him, and Thomas Graves was ready to answer no matter the cost. The overcast sky hung low over the coastal town as Thomas Graves stepped off the bus, the salty tang of sea air mingling with an undercurrent of something older, something unspoken. His boots crunched on the cobblestone pavement of the narrow streets, worn smooth by time and tide. A faded poster fluttered against a lamppost, its edges curling, announcing a long-forgotten festival. Thomas adjusted the strap of his weathered satchel, pulling from it a small, battered notebook and a camera, the tools of his trade and his obsession. His first stop was a small cafe on the edge of the harbor, its windows steamed from the warmth inside. The few patrons glanced his way with wary eyes, their conversations falling silent as he entered. Thomas approached the counter, where a middle-aged woman with tired eyes served coffee with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm looking into the disappearances," Thomas said quietly, watching for her reaction. "People who've gone missing over the years." She stiffened, a shadow crossing her face. "Best not to pry, mister. This town's got its secrets, and some things are better left alone." Thomas nodded, undeterred. He showed her a photograph, a young man standing on the pier with the pale outline of a derelict hotel looming in the background. "You see that place? The hotel." The woman's gaze flickered to the window as if expecting the building itself to appear in the street. "Aye," she whispered. "That place. It's cursed, some say." Leaving the cafe, Thomas's footsteps echoed down the empty streets as he followed the path that led to the town library. The building was a squat stone structure, its fire-aid weather-beaten but dignified. Inside, the air smelled of aged paper and dust, a sanctuary for forgotten stories. At a cluttered desk sat Evelyn Marsh, her glasses perched low on her nose as she sorted through a stack of brittle documents. "Meh. Graves," she greeted, her voice soft but firm. "I've heard of your inquiry." Thomas returned the greeting, explaining his theory about the hotel's connection to the disappearances. Evelyn's eyes darkened, reflecting a mix of sorrow and caution. "The hotel has been a blight on this town for decades," she said. "It's more than just an abandoned building. It's tied to memories, lost souls tethered by tragedy and despair." She handed Thomas a faded photograph, edges frayed, depicting the hotel in its prime, bustling with life. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, his posture heavy with sorrow. "That man was the owner," Evelyn continued. "His despair after a terrible loss cursed the place. Ever since, the hotel has been a beacon for those who are lost, pulling them into its grasp." Thomas's gaze lingered on the image, the weight of her words settling deep within him. As he left the library, the evening mist had begun to creep over the town, shrouding the streets in a ghostly veil. He overheard snippets of hushed conversations, warnings, and half-truths that seemed to circle around the hotel like a dark tide. Later, in the quiet solitude of his rented room, Thomas spread out the photographs. He had collected, each one a silent testament to the vanished. The hotel stood on the horizon in every image, a faded, spectral presence that refused to be ignored. His fingers trembled as he pressed the shutter on his camera, capturing the view from his window. The crumbling silhouette of the hotel bathed in the pale light of the setting sun. The deeper Thomas dug, the more the lines between past and present began to blur. The locals' fear was palpable, a heavy fog that threatened to smother the truth. And somewhere, beyond the edges of reality, the hotel waited, patient, watchful, and hungry. As Thomas closed his eyes that night, the whisper of the sea mingled with voices just beyond hearing, calling him back to the shadows where lost souls lingered. And the photograph's faded hotel promised that the story was far from over. The hotel's silhouette haunted his dreams, a silent sentinel at the edge of a mystery that was growing darker with every whispered secret. And Thomas knew that to uncover the truth, he would have to confront not only the town's secrets, but the shadows within himself. What lay beyond the veil was uncertain, but the photograph had already begun its silent pull. With dawn still hours away, Thomas opened his notebook and began to write, the scratch of his pen a fragile tether to a reality that was slipping fast. The whispers among the locals were only the beginning. The hotel's story was just unfolding, and he was caught in its haunting embrace. Thomas Graves sat hunched over a cluttered wooden table in the town library, the faint glow of a single desk lamp illuminating the yellowed pages before him. The musty scent of old paper and dust hung thick in the air, mingling with the distant, rhythmic crash of waves against the rocky shore. Around him, the quiet murmur of turning pages and soft footsteps was punctuated only by the occasional creak of the ancient building settling. Evelyn Marsh stood a few feet away, her fingers lightly tracing the spines of books on a nearby shelf. Her eyes, magnified slightly by the lenses of her glasses, watched Thomas with a mixture of sympathy and unease. She had warned him that deeper he dug, the darker the truths he would uncover, but Thomas's determination was unshakable. "Look at this," Thomas murmured, tapping a brittle newspaper clipping. The headline, faded but still legible, read, "Tragedy at the Seaside Hotel, owner found dead." Beneath the headline was a grainy photograph of the hotel itself, standing resolute on the cliff's edge, its once grand facade weathered but unmistakably proud. Evelyn leaned closer, her voice low and cautious. That was nearly 50 years ago. The hotel shut down shortly after. The owner, Arthur Pendry, was found in his room. No one truly knows what happened to him. Thomas's fingers hesitated over the text. It says here he was discovered by the staff, apparently in a state of despair, with no signs of foul play. But the circumstances remain a mystery. "The town has always whispered about it," Evelyn said, her gaze drifting toward the window, where the outline of the hotel was barely visible through the morning mist. "Some say his grief cursed the place. Others think it's haunted by those who vanished over the years." Thomas felt a chill as he glanced up toward the distant silhouette of the hotel. The building loomed like a ghostly sentinel, shrouded in fog that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. He returned to the papers, uncovering more stories of disappearances dating back decades, each victim's final moments tied, somehow, to the hotel. As he flipped through a tattered photo album, Thomas's heart quickened. One black and white image caught his eye, a group of guests smiling on the hotel's sunlit terrace, unaware of the dark fate that awaited the place and its visitors. The contrast between the jovial scene and the desolation that now surrounded the building struck him with a painful nostalgia. "Do you think the hotel itself holds the souls of the missing?" Thomas whispered, almost afraid to voice the thought. Evelyn nodded slowly. "That's what the old legends suggest. They say it's a place caught between times neither fully alive nor entirely dead. A prison for those lost to its curse." The room seemed to grow colder, the shadows deepening as Thomas absorbed the weight of her words. The past was not merely history. It was a living presence, a spectral echo that reached out from the faded photographs and whispered through the corridors of memory. Hours passed unnoticed as Thomas and Evelyn sifted through more documents, piecing together fragments of a story that stretched across generations. Each discovery drew him further into a web of despair and longing, one that threatened to consume him as it had so many before. When Thomas finally stepped outside, the sky was tinged with the pale hues of dawn. The hotel stood silent and foreboding on the horizon, its windows like dark eyes watching him. He pulled his coat tighter against the chill and took a photograph, a habit he had developed, compelled to capture every angle, every shadow. As the shutter clicked, a sudden gust of wind swept the mist across the shore, curling and twisting like fingers reaching out to grasp him. Thomas felt a shiver run down his spine, a whisper of something unseen brushing past his ear. He stared back at the hotel, a knot of dread tightening in his chest. The past was not dead, it was waiting, watching, and hungry. And Thomas Graves was now part of its story. The echoes of the past had begun to claim him. The chill of the coastal evening did little to deter Thomas Graves as he found himself once drawn toward the decrepit silhouette of the hotel perched like a forgotten relic against the horizon. The salt-laden wind tugged at his coat, carrying with it the distant crash of waves and a whisper so faint he questioned if it had passed through the howling gust or the corners of his own fractured mind. He raised his camera, fingers trembling slightly with a mixture of cold and something deeper, something unnameable that clung to the edges of his thoughts like a shadow he could neither shake nor fully understand. Through the lens, the hotel appeared simultaneously solid and spectral. Its weather-beaten facade seemed to shimmer in the fading light, the peeling paint and shattered windows distorting like a mirage. Thomas clicked the shutter repeatedly, each frame capturing not just the building, but something lurking just beyond perception. In some photographs, faint shapes wavered among the broken window panes, unaccountable blurs that refused explanation. Others revealed fleeting outlines of figures standing at the periphery, vanishing as soon as the camera's flash faded. Back in the cramped confines of his rented room above the town's solitary pub, Thomas spread his photographs across the wooden table, the yellowed light of a single lamp casting long shadows. He examined each image with increasing intensity, his breath caught in his throat as he noticed what his eyes had missed in the field. There amid the decay were faces twisted, mournful, trapped behind the glass like ghosts imprisoned in the frames themselves. His pulse quickened. The sensation was less of discovery and more of intrusion, as though he had stumbled through a veil best left untouched. The line between observer and participant blurred. Thomas's mind, already frayed by sleepless nights and the weight of his own past losses, began to fray further. His thoughts circled endlessly like restless tides, dragging him deeper into the hotel's spectral pull. His camera became both shield and tether, a way to capture, and perhaps contain the creeping horror that stalked the edges of his vision. One afternoon, seeking a moment of respite, Thomas found himself seated in the dim quiet of the town library. The scent of old paper and dust was comforting, yet beneath it lay something heavier, a history soaked in silence and unspoken dread. Evelyn Marsh, the librarian and local historian, moved among the stacks with a cautious grace, her eyes sharp beneath the rim of her glasses. She glanced at Thomas with a mixture of sympathy and warning. "This hotel," she began carefully, her voice low as if afraid of being overheard, "it's more than just an abandoned building. It's a wound in the town's history, a place where memories twist and linger, and sometimes they don't let go." Thomas leaned in, eager for any insight. "Do you think the disappearances are connected to it?" Evelyn hesitated, a flicker of fear shadowing her gaze. "Some here believe the hotel feeds on those who look back too long or too hard. Nostalgia can be a dangerous thing, especially when it's tangled with loss and regret." Her words echoed in Thomas's mind long after he left the library. He knew the path he was on was perilous, but the need for answers gnawed at him relentlessly. As dusk settled once more, he returned to the hotel's edge, the crumbling structure looming like a sentinel against the darkening sky. The wind had dropped, replaced by a thickening stillness that pressed against his skin. Thomas's footsteps crunched on the gravel as he drew closer, the air growing dense and cold. A shadow flickered across the broken windows, too quick to be a trick of the light. His breath caught in his throat as the building seemed to exhale a sigh of ancient sorrow. Suddenly a whisper, barely audible, curled around him. It was not a voice, but a breath, a fragment of a memory lost to time. Thomas stood frozen, the line between the living world and the spectral realm thinning to a fragile thread. The hotel was no longer just a backdrop to tragedy, it was a living presence, watching, waiting, and pulling him inexorably into its haunted embrace. Despite the fear that gripped him, Thomas raised his camera once again, determined to capture the truth, even if it meant confronting the darkness within and without. The photograph he took that night would later reveal more than just the dilapidated walls. It would show the first unmistakable hint that the hotel was reaching out not just to him, but to all those lost souls forever entwined in its cursed imagery. As he turned away from the building, the whispers faded into the night, but the cold lingered, a reminder that some mysteries are more than mere stories. They are echoes of pain, shadows of the past, and the first tremors of an obsession that would soon consume him entirely. The hotel waited silently, its windows like eyes reflecting 1,000 vanished lives. And Thomas Graves, drawn by the whispering depths of nostalgia and despair, was beginning to understand that some places are best left unseen. Yet the pull was too strong, too haunting to resist. The night closed around him as he walked back toward the town. The image of the hotel burned into his mind like a spectral brand. Somewhere deep inside, a question gnawed relentlessly. Was he simply a witness? Or was he becoming the next lost soul drawn into the hotel's endless photograph? The answer, he feared, would soon come with a cruel and unyielding clarity. And with that thought, the darkness swallowed the light, leaving only the echo of a whisper and the faintest silhouette of a building at the end of a photograph. The morning air was thick with the salty tang of the sea as Thomas Graves pushed open the heavy door of the town library. The aged hinges creaked a reluctant greeting, and the scent of yellowed pages and dust enveloped him like an old, familiar cloak. Here, amid the quiet rows of books and forgotten records, he hoped to find the clues that had eluded him so far. The hotel's faded silhouette haunted every missing person's photograph, but the town itself seemed locked in silence around it, a silence he was determined to break. Evelyn Marsh was waiting amid the stacks, her glasses perched low on her nose as she leafed through a brittle volume. Her presence was at once reassuring and unsettling. She carried the weight of the town's secrets in her wary eyes. "Thomas," she greeted quietly, closing the book with a soft thud. "I hope you understand what you're getting into. Some things are best left buried." He looked at her steadily, sensing the tremor beneath her composed exterior. "I need to know, Evelyn. The disappearances, the hotel, there has to be a connection." She sighed, folding her hands over the book. "There is, but it's a dangerous path. This town has long been haunted not just by ghosts, but by fear itself. The hotel isn't just an old building, it's a wound that never healed." Thomas nodded, his fingers tightening around his notebook. "Have you seen the photographs? Everyone has that hotel in the background. It's like it's watching, waiting." "Exactly," Evelyn whispered. "And the more you look, the more it pulls you in. People have vanished chasing the truth, some never come back." Her warning lingered in the air as the library's ancient clock chimed softly, marking the passage of time as if it too felt the weight of the past. Later, stepping out into the chill afternoon, Thomas nearly collided with Detective Mark Halstead, who eyed him with a mixture of suspicion and frustration. "You re-stirring up old ghosts, Graves," Halstead said bluntly, his tone leaving no room for argument. "This town's had enough of chasing shadows." Thomas met Detective's gaze, unflinching. "I'm not chasing shadows, Detective. I'm chasing facts, disappearances, photographs, witnesses. There's something here that needs explaining." Halstead shook his head, a tight line forming at his mouth. "Facts don't come wrapped in ghost stories. You want answers. Stick to what can be proven. Leave the rest alone for your own good." The exchange was a stark reminder of the gulf between them, Thomas's growing belief in the supernatural clashing with Halstead's steadfast pragmatism. Yet, beneath the detective's skepticism, Thomas sensed a flicker of unease, a silent acknowledgement that the hotel's shadow cast longer than mere legend. That evening, the three met at a modest seaside cafe, the fading light casting long shadows through the windows. Evelyn's voice was low and urgent, Halstead's expression tight with disbelief, and Thomas caught between their opposing worlds. "The hotel's history is stained with tragedy," Evelyn said, eyes flickering with old pain. "Its owner lost everything: family, sanity. The curse began then, and it feeds on those who look back too long." Halstead scoffed quietly. "Curse or not, people vanish because of real reasons: running away, accidents, foul play. We can't let superstition cloud the investigation." Thomas leaned forward, voice steady but intense. Sometimes the truth lies between what's seen and unseen. We can't ignore the pattern. The photographs, the disappearances, they reconnected. The conversation stretched on, a fragile truce held together by shared concern but fractured by doubt. As night deepened outside, Thomas felt the hotel's presence like a cold breath against his skin. Later, alone in his rented room, Thomas spread the photographs across the worn desk. The hotel loomed in each frame, its crumbling facade a silent sentinel. He traced its outline with a finger, feeling the pull of nostalgia mixed with dread. A sudden chill swept the room, and the shadows seemed to flicker and stretch unnaturally. Was it his imagination, or was the hotel watching still? The thought gnawed at him, feeding his obsession even as Evelyn's warning echoed in his mind. He whispered to the empty room, "I won't stop. Not until I understand." Outside, the wind moaned softly through the streets, carrying the weight of secrets and lost souls waiting patiently in the mist. The night deepened, and Thomas's resolve hardened. The town's secret was alive, and he was entwined in its dark embrace, teetering on the edge between revelation and ruin. As the clock ticked relentlessly onward, the hotel's faded image flickered in his mind's eye, a ghostly reminder that some pasts refused to die quietly. The question was no longer whether he could uncover the truth, but whether he could survive it. The shadows lengthened,